Don't chew on that, Max.
Cooper loves that chew too.
Oh, now he's into Cooper's food. Wow, he is loving it. What do you feed Cooper?
Blue Buffalo Life Protection Formula. He never leaves a crumb. I love it because it's made with high-quality protein, nutrient-rich fruits and veggies, and wholesome whole grains.
Looks like we're switching to Blue.
Blue Buffalo foods are made with the superior ingredients your dog needs to thrive. Can your dog food say that? Visit feedbluefood.com to learn more.
Good morning, Crust. It's a great day to be a bread brother.
Ugh, mornings are not my jam. Or jelly.
Oh, come on. Stop loafing around.
I just woke up feeling hollow inside.
Psst, just grab one of the new Morning Uncrustables sandwiches, like Bright-Eyed Berry or Up an Apple, filled with 12 grams of protein and tons of deliciousness. Crust, what are you eating?
It's just granola, not even yogurt.
No crust, no fuss. Uncrust your mornings.
Every who down in Who Newville liked the holidays a ton. But where to get great prices on gifts, they had no idea. None. They searched and they searched for great gifts under $25. Gifts for spouses and friends and even their toddlers. When suddenly one who shouted, Walmart has what you want, knowing they have Lego, Tree Hut, and low prices to flaunt. So they enjoy the holiday season as who's often do. Cheering and shouting, Walmart has incredible gifts. Who knew? Find gifts they'll love under $25 at Walmart.
Welcome to a very special edition of Safe Room, Bloody Disgusting's horror gaming podcast. As always, I'm your host, Jay Krieger. And while Neil is absent today, I'm incredibly lucky to be joined by two very special guests from Tarsier Studios, that being the folks behind Little Nightmares 1 and 2, and the soon-to-be-released Reanimal. So enough yapping from me. I will let our guests introduce themselves.
Hey, my name is Andreas. I'm one of the co-founders of Tarsier. I've had various roles throughout these 20 years now, but now I'm working as a producer on Reanimal.
And I'm Dave Mervik. I have been here about 15 years now, and I'm the narrative director on Reanimal.
Thank you guys both for taking the time to chat with me today. It's really exciting to get to pick your guys' brain about Reanimal, which just recently announced that you guys are planning to ship in February of 2026. And so, with that date right around the corner, you guys must be in the home stretch. So, for you, Andreas, how does it feel to be so close to sort of releasing this animal onto gamers?
It's that final stretch is always stressful. It's also really nice when you see everything come together. But yeah, it's very stressful. We're working right now on the different platforms to make everything shine. Even looking at patches for past release. And everything related to it, release trailer, whatnot. It's so many things, but it's like when you see the package, when you play the game, the complete package of everything, trailers and the game itself. I'm extremely proud, and it's such a unique and cool game.
And Dave, for you, being the narrative director for this one, being so close to something and seeing it all kind of come together right before the finish line, what's that kind of like from the narrative aspect of things?
It's mainly abject panic because I can't make any changes now. Because you when things come together, that's when you kind of go, oh shit, I should have done that. It's and my stuff kind of starts earlier and ends earlier, so poor Andreas jumped into the producer role at like the worst time of the project. But yeah, so like I'm in a situation now where I'm looking to the future already, what we do with DLC and stuff like that. But yeah, you can't help it. I mean, there's still people. The guy I work with, Patrick, I keep having to tell him to get his fingers off. He's like, "Oh, we could just fix this, fix it." And it's just like it's a great environment to be in. That with people who are never happy leaving things. Oh, this is good enough is like one of the worst things you can say here. but there's a point where you just have to say, yeah, we have to be done with this, and remember, remember any ideas that you don't get in for the future, so yeah.
Yeah, not that I would equate, right, being a game critic to being a narrative designer, but I'm sure that, it's very similar in that, like, trying to look at work that you've already published or already submitted, it's like the worst thing ever, because all you can do is kind of pick apart the little pieces that you want to change for the future. But like you said, just thinking about the future and whatnot and how you can adapt or make certain alterations, I suppose.
Yeah, and you kind of already start imagining like what people are going to say when they come to play it or review it, and you're like that. Yeah, I know, man, I agree. And again, it's just like having that power taken from you, but then we would never release anything, or it would
Sure.
take us like 10, 15 years to do a game, but then like we would be like, that's it. Meanwhile, the world's moved on, and oh, but. Yeah, it is like Andreas said, it's really coming together, I don't play it every day anymore, but when I played it just recently, it was like, oh bloody hell, it's feeling a bit nice, this, and usually after this many years, you start to get a bit dead inside to it, the things that kind of got you excited in the beginning don't get you excited anymore. It's still now I'm like, oh bloody hell, I love this bit, and that's a really nice position to be in, so it's very cool.
I think when we went to Gamescom and we played co-op with the press, that's when it kind of that relit kind of that excitement of you've seen the same scene for 20 times, 50 times, but when you saw those people at Gamescom playing the game and playing in co-op, it was just it was such a cool experience, and that's. I get that a bit every week now as well when you see a scene that has been reworked a bit, or it's amazing. There's something to the games that we do where it looks really shit up until like beta or something. And when things start to come together.
No,
sorry. I mean, just after pre-prod, it's no, but it's you need everything to come together for it to kind of really shine, because the games we do need the audio, it needs the mechanics, it needs the narrative, it needs the art to kind of lift each other up. Or it's the combination of it that just makes it magical.
Yeah, as producer, it's funny mentioning, getting to actually see people play at Gamescom, press and whatnot. I guess, how do you kind of like balance feedback, right? It's like you have obviously internal testing for that, and then I'm sure you're going to be hearing things from, critics getting their first sort of look at things or first hands-on. How does the studio kind of like deal with feedback in terms of whether it's the game mechanics or whether it's like the narrative aspect of things?
It's you have a different type of feedback, right? You have just the bugs, okay, that we've seen now since we released the demo on Steam and console. That's quite easy, right? Maybe that's not really feedback, that's just bugs. Okay, let's fix them for but there is maybe some that we can act on, but most, the game is almost done, so it's not that much we can do. We have to live with the decisions we made. I can't remember. Is there anything that we've done since Gamescom that we acted on? Oh yes, small bits and bobs actually. When it comes to like how intuitive is this scene? Does the player understand it? Absolutely, smaller bits and bobs like that. Absolutely, but mechanics-wise, bigger things, no.
Part of it. One of the things that was nice. This is like blowing our own trumpet a bit, but like, we got feedback on stuff that we were a bit worried about. If you know what I mean, like we had a feeling that co-op horror could be a really cool thing to tackle. We had a feeling that we could present it in a way that didn't run the risk of people titting about, You know, like, because that was the one thing we were really worried about, is if like people mess about a lot, it kind of kills the horror, and that's why we shied away from it back in the day with like LN2 and stuff.
Mm.
I was like, oh, it feels like there's something there though. No one makes co-op horror.
Mm.
So we're like, let's have a go. Let's see if we can get people so invested that they're not messing about.
Right.
And then so we would start. You do start to worry though, and both Gamescoms actually, and TGS's for that matter, were like the first time we like let something out there for people to have a go of. And it was just that getting that feedback of seeing how people really got into it and had those kind of fright moments and had those kind of working together moments that we were like, oh, thank God. Do you know what I mean? It was like, you know, because that could have been like, oh shit, it didn't work at all, did it? It's a bit late now. But so that was like really nice, at least just to put the wind back in our sails, that we were kind of on the right tip, like.
Yeah, and you mentioning co-op, we can just like get right into that. Andreas, how was like designing with co-op in mind? I'm interested just kind of like how that focus came about for Reanimal, and maybe some of the initial challenges that you guys endured early on in developing with that focus this time around.
First of all, we're not used to that as a studio, especially not online. So when we started talking about it, because of a couple of different aspects. One was when looking at how people played Little Nightmares, our Little Nightmares games. There were always these stories about people playing together with their partner or friend or kid, and they would pass and play, or just one watches and one plays. And it kind of, I guess, in the same timeline, it was the same time we talked about the experience of watching a horror movie by yourself versus watching it with a friend. Even like games as well, like PT, one of the scariest. I mean, I can't even see the icon on my PlayStation because it just gives me goosebumps. I can't launch the game myself. But there's this, you can, when you have someone with you, you can laugh a bit nervously, kind of dismantle the tension a bit so you can survive the experience. But the baseline here is that it creates something else, right? You can, it's another kind of dynamic there that is quite interesting. And it also, we also wanted to make something a bit darker and scarier with Reanimal, so it kind of fitted that. Those two things fitted quite nicely together, because we don't do all out horror games, but we wanted to go a bit closer to that, and combining that with like being able to play together was really interesting to us. So I guess it was a couple of different factors. Also to part of innovating or challenging yourself and making something new was there as well when we talked about it. But I think, for me personally, it was definitely the watching a horror movie together versus watching it by yourself. It just creates something magical. And also, one more thing actually, there were other games on market that was released back then, like was it Takes Two, or was it? I can't remember. Maybe it was
It Takes Two. I remember
yeah,
quite early on, didn't we?
Yeah, and it kind of revived my faith, at least, in local co-op, couch co-op. That people actually want it still, because at some point people said that it was just dead. People just play online. So that revived my faith in it. and it also showed that it's hugely popular. And having that in a horror setting, yeah, that could be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the first things that kind of jumped out to me about Reanimal is that it's filling not only this void, it seemed, of couch co-op, which, I grew up with a lot of games like that, but to even just, have it set within this horror world is kind of just like the best of both worlds, which I feel like there was definitely a gap in. I guess, Dave, for you, like we were talking just briefly a moment ago about like influences in film. I'm curious, like, what lessons did you kind of learn from the storytelling in Little Nightmares 1 and 2? And how did that sort of inform your approach to developing the narrative here for Reanimal?
Yeah, I mean, I think like back then, telling the story the way we did in Little Nightmares, that felt like quite a leap of faith
Mm.
because games didn't really do story, or like it wasn't that common to tell story that way. I think
Mm.
Limbo had come out fairly, you know, soon before we'd started, but like traditionally, you get all of those awful exposition dialogues, where just tell everyone what to think, and you feel very kind of patronized by the game. And whenever I remember there was like just a handful of us in the very beginning when we were concocting the idea for what would become Hunger and then what would become Little Nightmares. It was the games like that dropped you in the middle of somewhere and then didn't hold your hand. Games like Another World and Heart of Darkness, like Flashback. This big intrigue where you were just like, now you've got to survive. This is like a whole adventure you're going to be going on, and then you'll figure out what's going on as you go. Like, but you felt very trusted in those kind of games to get it and to use your imagination. And that was the kind of stuff that we were inspired by, but it still felt quite like, yeah, but shit, if people don't like that? Maybe people want that terrible exposition or whatever. But like, so when LM1 and 2 kind of did way better than we expected, even, we were like, oh, nice, that's great. This is kind of a thing that we can do well. It seems, it was like we got a kick out of doing those kind of games. And that means that you can express yourself well
Mm.
when with whatever story you tell. But like even once we started talking about something new, I didn't want to, and we're all like this in our own areas. But like I didn't want to just do the same old over again. I didn't want to go, oh, here's another silent story where everything else. I was like, I feel like we can do it with some dialogue. I feel like we can evolve the way we tell stories, like still kind of make these games that intrigue people and get them to engage with it, but also having voice acting as another tool in our toolbox instead of having this kind of blanket ban on dialogue. Like it just felt I wanted to try it, and I tried it for a long time. There was resistance to it, obviously, because like, hang on a minute, but game dialogue sucks. Yeah, like, well, let's make some that doesn't then, or let's make some that uses that minimalist approach. And so I did loads of tests. It was actually the intro cinematic was the test that I ended up doing with Patrick, my colleague or cinematic artist, and so we got like someone in the studio who's like she's a really good voice actor, and it was actually she did it in Danish to begin with, but yeah, so we just did a few tests here and there, and it started to be nice. But I also at the same time, because there was such resistance to it, and because it was kind of new, I started to panic. I was like, "Oh, maybe we just shouldn't do this. We're gonna blow it, and it's gonna be my fault and all this." So like, I went into the meeting with some of our producers and said, "Listen, I've got this. You can see I've been working for the last few weeks or whatever, but I've already decided and we're not gonna do it. So doesn't matter if you like it or not." Put it on, and they really liked it. So I had to suddenly do an about face. I was like, "Oh, okay, right. I guess what." So I had to kind of get back into the idea that we were going to take this approach and stuff, but it's like very, very minimal. So that's what we carried forward, is this idea of like kind of getting people to meet you in the middle, as I like to think of it. You give them stuff, and then they go, "Ah, what am I not hearing then? What, what else do I need? Like, what else is in this room that I can bring in to concoct this story in my head? But I also, like I say, I think it's quite nice to not sort of say, well, you tell me what you think is happening in this game. I don't want to do that over and over again. So I think it felt quite nice to kind of go, now we've got a story and this is the way we're going to present it, and then, see how you get on.
Yeah, no, the sort of like reinventing yourself so you're not just repeating yourself is, I'm sure, one of the sort of greatest challenges when you've been doing anything creative for clearly as long as you guys have been. I guess, one of the inherent strengths that I found, and you spoke to it a little bit about Ellen 1 and 2, was, the sort of environmental storytelling, given that there was, no dialogue in those. So I guess for Reanimal, how was sort of that process for you of having some voice acting, but still having that really, which is clearly evident from the demo, that very sort of like refined aspect of environmental storytelling?
Yeah, I mean, that hasn't really changed. Like, the environmental storytelling is as it was, and the thing you got to make sure of in the very beginning is that everyone has a clear understanding of what the world is, what it represents, who these characters are, why they're here, um, what's the backstory, because we all know where all of this has come from, but we don't tell people that. So that's really important for people, particularly the artists, to bring that, where, and they use their own judgment there, like, oh, since I know this about the world and I know this about the backstory, I think this could be quite cool here, a little tidbit, or, just a little hint of something that these kids have brought with them. And so that's really important, and that was a hard thing to stay on top of, because from the beginning, and as we kind of evolve this idea, the story it does tend to change. You kind of like, oh, but what if we did this? This would be even better. And that, I'm terrible for that. I keep thinking, we've got this joke, me and Patrick, about how many endings the game's had, because as the game evolves, as the story kind of gets more refined or pared down, or like extra little layers here and there, but that ending doesn't work as well as it did now. So we need to take another run at that. And I have no idea how many endings we've done, but and so keeping people on, like, understanding that, like, oh shit, we need to tell people that the story's changed because they're still working under this assumption, So it's constantly like staying on top of that. And like I say, just trusting people to use their own judgment then, whether it's kind of creating like an environment or a prop, or if the audio guys are doing something that maybe this understanding of the story will kind of feed the way they approach that. So all of that I don't stand with everyone sort of saying, and now do this, because these are craftspeople and they're experts in that field. So it's more kind of just conveying everything I know so that they know it as well as possible, and then they can bring that to their own work. And then just, it's like adding new stuff to the mix then, like I say, just with the VO, it's like a very, very minimal use of VO, just so you can bring people in a bit more, and have situations where a character will say something and then the player's thinking, why did they say it like that? Or that felt a bit off, the way that was said, or what are they now not saying? It's what they do say and what they don't say are as important as each other. So it's just using it as a tool rather than just some a diary entry, or the dreaded journal pages that you find all over the world that nobody reads.
Notably, Little Nightmare 1 and 2 were both P-rated games, and Reanimal is M-rated, right? So, Andreas, I'm curious, like, how do you guys kind of balance the new creative freedom of this being an M rating, which naturally allows for darker, potentially more gruesome content, while still retaining the studio's kind of like signature emotional and atmospheric tone, if you will?
I mean, the approach we've had is not thinking that much about rating
Mm.
and more about what do we want to show and not show. So I think that has definitely given us some freedom. I'm curious to see how it will affect the end, the end result, how many people will buy the game, because Little Nightmares, I think, just having the 16 rating made it probably a bit more accessible, also for families, with young teenagers. I mean, kids that are not 16, where I guess our game will maybe not hit home that well in that category of players. But anyways, that we haven't been thinking. I think about those kind of things because I also work as a business developer at the studio. But from Merv's point of view and the artists and whatnot, they have just been thinking about what is the coolest game that we can do, and not think that much about age rating. Obviously, you come to a point in time where you rate the game, and then you need to be careful with what you do, so you don't ruin the existing ratings. But I mean, I guess it has come with some freedom because we haven't really thought about it as developers. I think our publisher is probably stressed out though.
I was mostly asking about the rating because of the fact that naturally comes with freedom. But my co-host Neil and I, whenever we talk about horror games and whatnot, it's very rarely simply praising games for like their scare factor, if you will, right? So I guess, Dave, for you, like in developing a narrative that is free from the restraints of like a T rating, did that feel sort of like liberating from a creative standpoint?
It's a good question, that, because I don't know if I know I felt like I was harping on at one point about yeah, but this has got to be, it's got to feel more violent, and I didn't mean that literally, let's just stave as many heads in as possible, and just be kind of wanton about it, but that violence bleeds through every aspect of the game. This is like a story rooted in violence. These kids have come from violence, and so the way we've illustrated that should reflect that, and the way the audio was composed should reflect that. All of that. It's more like that. And it always starts with like a core. What is the core? What's the core of the story? Why are these kids here? Why are they doing what they're doing? How do they end up right now? How do we execute that to the best of our ability? I honestly didn't know. I think I've been worrying since you've been talking, because I was like, I think I've been telling people this is like 16. Is that, am I just lying now? So we're gonna have to just get out and edit some of those interviews. So I literally had no idea what our rating was.
Sure.
But no, I wouldn't say liberated. I think if we'd been stuck to a rating like 16, for example, which the game isn't, I know that now, but and I'm kind of saying, yeah, but the best way to illustrate this point here would be to do this. Well, you can't do that because this is a 12 or it's a 16 or whatever. Then I would have felt a bit like that sucks, But it's never been that. That's not been the case, really. It's just been we never like to go too far just because we can. And I think generally when I see things that feel out of the realms of what we need to do, then I tend to kind of go, that feels a bit much, that, man. It doesn't. It's laboring the point rather than making the point. So, I think what I would say has been liberating is THQ they're kind of with us on this. They kind of go, no, I get why you've done that. And that is the most liberating thing, is that you're not fighting with your publisher, or you're not fighting within the dev team. Everyone kind of gets what we're trying to do. And sometimes, you get Stefan from THQ sort of saying, I think that thing you've taken out, you should put back in. I think That's strong. That was, and because then someone gets it, and they're kind of wanting this to be the best it can be as well. So I think that's always been the best. We had that with Bandai back in the day. We've got that with THQ now. Is that if people buy into the vision, buy into what we're trying to do and why, that's the most liberating thing you could possibly have as a dev.
When the holidays start to feel a bit repetitive, reach for a Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry and put your twist on tradition. A bold cranberry and winter spice flavor fusion, Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry is a refreshing way to shake things up this sipping season. And only for a limited time. Sprite. Obey your thirst.
We find Vecna, we end this once and for all, together.
On December 25th.
We have a plan. It's a bit insane. Everyone in?
He knows where we are.
Watch out!
Get ready for one last adventure.
We stay true to ourselves. Stay true to our friends, no matter the cost.
Found you. Stranger Things, Season 5, Volume 2, begins December 25th, only on Netflix.
My name is Percy Jackson. Getting in trouble is like breathing for me.
The hit series returns to Disney Plus and Hulu.
The danger the camp is under is greater than you can possibly imagine.
For the key to our survival, 3 of you must quest to the Sea of Monsters.
Let's go do the impossible.
Percy Jackson and the Olympians. New season 2 episode premiere December 10th on Disney Plus and Hulu. Learn more at disneyplus.com/what's on.
Guess that also raises a question that I have about the creative process in developing the narrative and naturally that going along with the world. Like, how do you deal with feedback about, your creative process and further developing this world of Reanimal? Because as you said previously, like, you are very cognizant of the fact you want to evolve the storytelling here. You also, I'm sure, want to push yourself as a creative to not just sort of like rest on your laurels, if you will. But how do you deal with like feedback, whether it's internally or whether it's externally from a publisher?
I'm going to be honest here. Like, I'm not always that good at it. Dealing with it. Because you get attached to stuff, and I've got to own that I react emotionally sometimes, if it's like, oh, we need to change this because X, Y, Z or whatever, or I don't think this works. And I'm like, it fucking does, man. You're not thinking about it. It's like this, because you start to love stuff so much. You're like, this is exactly how I want to do this. And you get almost tunnel vision. And then some bastard comes in from the outside and says, your tunnel vision needs to think about it this way as well. I'm like, oh, damn it. And it's, all of this stuff suddenly comes into your little bubble. Reality, I guess you have to call it. And so then I'm kind of like, sometimes my first reaction is an emotional one. I'm like, I get a bit annoyed, or I'll fight that point for as much as I can, and then have a bit of a mood if I don't win. But like, and I am trying to be better at that, and we all can be better at that, and try and understand where the feedback's coming from, because I think if you can understand that, then it's always like, because everyone wants to make this the best game it can be, and so their perspective is oftentimes really, really valid, and it's like you're thinking this because you know this, but other people who don't know this won't be thinking like you're thinking, and you have to adopt that perspective of the outsider when you're judging your own work, and it's you grow that way. So yeah, in all honesty, sometimes, I mean, I'm not a little baby about it, but like sometimes when it's a particular thing that I've loved, like you say, kill your darling. Sometimes I've had a real darling and it starts to look like it's about to be slaughtered, and I'm like, oh, come on, man, fuck's sake. And all this, and it's hard. It is hard, but I think, and I see that in colleagues as well, and you kind of appreciate it. And I'm trying to make myself look better now, but like, I wouldn't have it any other way, because that means people really give a fuck about what they're doing, and it means something to them more than I will now tick this box. The game now has a story. Well done, me. It's sort of like, yeah, but this story matters, and like the way this character's illustrated matters. The way this level plays out really, really matters to someone. And so, as long as we can all kind of focus on the work and like the work together is better if we make these choices. Then it's to the better for everyone who gets the game afterwards. So yeah, I'm trying to be more grown up when feedback comes in.
Andreas, I have a similar question for you being on the producer side of things. How do you handle championing aspects of the design while naturally being flexible to feedback, again, whether that's internal or external?
I mean, the way, so my background is in coding. So I used to be a coder, and maybe not the good kind of coder, more the kind of creative coder.
Not one of those good coders.
So with that said, I'm probably one of the worst producers in that sense, because I do get my hands dirty in the design of things and have opinions of things. But the way I work is to try to listen to the directors as much as possible and talk to the team to make sure that we're, trying to follow the direction as much as possible. But it's I tend to be part of that decision-making process as well, with my own thoughts on it. But obviously I don't have, since I don't craft in my daily work like Mervis, I don't have that. Maybe I do in some cases, actually, emotional attachment.
You came
to
up with
something.
static, though. You've always got that. You invented static.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I had a seed.
Be creative.
I love the combination of it, though. But so I work a lot with the art director now at the end of the project to kind of do the final tweaks of the game and decision making around that. But I think I'm probably a bit less emotionally attached to things than I mean I'm the wrecking ball, I guess, going in there and just ruining people's days, like Merv's day.
You just mentioned sort of like working with the art direction. Maybe you guys can both speak a little bit to this. They're one of the sort of like beats of this game, or one of the things that was mentioned in terms of it being a feature, is the protagonist's troubled past. Kind of like, how does that influence, I suppose, the design of like the monsters in the world around them? That was one of the first things that I remember reading about the game that I thought kind of jumped out to me. Can you share a little insight into that?
We could, but I don't know if we should.
All right.
Yeah, but I mean that stuff comes from such an amazing place. And I think I remember us talking about that. That like these monsters were kind of bear some inspiration from the characters' past, but it's not like not super literal. It's not like a 1-1 correlation. Right. It's just he and they knew where these characters had come from, and it was just one of the many things that kind of went into that big blender. That out the other end comes this thing, which even now I'm like, how do you do that? I honestly don't know. But so I think to kind of to point at the thing. See, the weird thing is I interpret where the characters' pasts have come into the design of the monsters. They don't kind of say, and here's Sniffer, and this the hat is because this, and the face is because this. He just goes, here's this monster, and we're like that. Oh, fuck, man, that's nasty. And it's the same with all of them. And so they get tweaked a little bit based on feedback, and so they iterate them and stuff. But then, at least I do. I haven't asked if anyone else does, but like, I start to do what the theorists do, the Little Nightmares theorists. I'm like, well, I think this is because this, and so I don't want to know if I'm right, but yeah, like I say, I wouldn't want to kind of, even if I could, I wouldn't want to try and kind of force the hand a little bit in terms of what they come up with when it's monsters, because there's a secret sauce going on there that you almost don't want to mess with. And it's the best I can say, really. But like, I don't understand where it comes from, and long may that continue, because I just think we generally Pella, like when he presents stuff that they've done, he just listens out for what people like get a kick out of, what resonates with them, and that's how Reanimal happened. It was like, it seems to like animals, these nasty animals that we're doing, nice, cool, and so they do more work in that area, and it's just, yeah.
Yeah, Neil and I always find that the best horrors are the ones that often are inexplainable, right? It's like we don't want the answers as much as it's fun to read theories online from people and whatnot and be like, oh, that's mad, or I don't see that at all, or maybe I agree with that. But like at the end of the day, the things that are inexplainable are the ones that kind of like stick with us the longest, because it's like, oh yeah, what could be the reason for that? So that's kind of great to hear that, you guys.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think I'm exactly of that opinion. That like when I don't understand something, then that's tickling your lizard brain. There's something going on there that you're not ready to cope with. I think that's what real horror is for me.
Talking about like what horror is for you, like for you guys, what's sort of like your horror inspirations, I suppose, like outside of, let's say, even Reanimal, like, are you guys horror fans? What about the genre maybe do you find to be its sort of like inherent strengths that resonate with you? Andreas, I'll start with you.
I mean, me and Merv, we were at a concert the other week. It was the Malmö Symphony Orchestra playing horror music.
Oh, very cool.
It was actually really amazing. One of, I'm not sure if it fits really well, but they played Twin Peaks, which is one of my favorites, and Alien, and I mean all the classic, all the old classic.
With the theme from The Omen, with that. Can't remember what it was. Ava Satanica. I can't remember what it was called, but it was like with the whole choir.
Yep.
Oh, amazing.
Anyway, it was really amazing. I mean, I don't bring that much inspiration into the game itself in that way, I think. But I do agree with what Merv said before. Like, if I think about the movies that I like, it's the ones that are that don't tell you too much, don't show too much, or where you have to activate yourself, kind of. So I guess that's why Twin Peaks kind of tickles my brain more than the upfront, blood and gore kind of movies. I mean, Alien, I do remember, when I was a kid watching that movie, I couldn't let that movie go for 10 years. It was like in my head for 10 years after I watched it. and that also put a certain tone to my teenage years. Amazing movie. But I think Merv, you probably have better sources of inspiration for the narrative.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all over the shop though, like, you know, because there's very, very few that genuinely scare me. Like, I've seen so many horror movies and loved so many, but in terms of the things that leave you cold, I need someone. I always need someone to go, yeah, then you need to look at this, or you need to look at this, because it's such a cliche also to mention Lynch, because not all of his are super like pure horror to me. You know, they're fantastic, but it doesn't. Funnily enough, it is Twin Peaks, like you mentioned, and especially Fire Walk with Me, which was kind of much maligned when it came out, but there's some just chilling stuff in that. I think the performance of Cheryl Lee in that, and at the end of Twin Peaks season 3, where you just get this, like, it's like that muted feeling you get when you're having, you know, some of the best nightmares, where everything just feels turned down, and you've lost that control, because that's not how you're supposed to feel. That's not how life is. There's always ambience around, but then someone turns that down, and you just focus on something that feels just slightly off. I mean, like, how brave is that of him to just have an echo of Mrs. Palmer screaming from the other. I don't know if you've seen it, so I don't want to spoil it for you. You know, but you know, you just have this echo of another reality, which leads to one of the best screams ever committed to film. You know, it's things like that where I'm like, oh, you don't know why you're scared of that. You don't know why it's kind of bothered you in some way. You know, so it's Twin Peaks all over except for season 2.
But it's a psychological horror, right? Where it's, you know, the tension
kind of. I just think someone's going to get it right, and then I'll have to just go and lock myself in a room, because if someone manages to get that capture that lightning where, like, it feels like you're having a nightmare. I don't know of anyone who can do that. You see, the Japanese horror, yeah, it looks cool, but it doesn't do it for me. You know, I think, just trying to, off the top of my head though, Exorcist 3, I think, more so than The Exorcist. I think The Exorcist is great, but Exorcist 3 gets close to that surrealism aspect, which I think and the sound design of Exorcist 3, I think, is just fantastic. There's elements of Jacob's Ladder, which I think are, again, really quite nice. Texas Chainsaw is not really horror, but like, there was something that left me shaken by that, because I felt like I'd watched something real, you know, back like with Cannibal Holocaust came out, and, you know, all those, like, the first found footage movies where people weren't sure if they were watching something real or kind of filmed. There's something there that leaves you a bit shaken. And I remember with Texas Chainsaw, it was just like so wanton again, and that's one of the few of those kind of slasher movies that I kind of really appreciate, because it was people just they were meaningless to that guy, you know, and that's kind of like a primal fear, you know, that, like, yeah, it doesn't matter what thoughts you've got, it doesn't matter what ambitions you've got, because now you've been put on a hook, or, you know, now you just had the hammer. I don't know, there's something about it, which just felt like absolutely chilling. But yeah, I mean, I'll probably get out of this and think, but that and that, you know, that, you know, there's so many out there, but yeah, I'm always looking for something that's gonna kind of do it for me, and it's just hard. Do you have any tips, by the way, as a horror fan?
I definitely kind of agree with the sentiment that the three of us have kind of just, Neil and I talk a lot about adjacent horror and subgenres that fall underneath that umbrella of horror. And, kind of like what you were saying a little bit, Dave, where, I'm 33. I've been watching horror movies for most of my life, and I don't really still love the genre because it always terrifies me or chills me to the bone. But it's more about just like exploring unique ways to explore, the human psyche, if you will. You're talking about like the surreal aspect of Lynch's work, or talking about like psychological horror and those different aspects. And I think that, taking little bits and pieces from so many different subgenres and sort of like melding it into something can often yield the most interesting creative results. And like, I very rarely now like play a horror game or watch a horror movie to be like really terrified, but I kind of just want to see how a creative can explore, their sort of narrative angle utilizing that. Like a lot of times these days when I'm writing about games, whether it's horror or otherwise, like I try to tackle horror adjacent games that take one element of horror, but then utilize that in sort of weird ways that can create, some really unique types of experiences. Like I just played through a game called Kingdoms of the Dump, which is a a trash themed JRPG that, if you just look at it, it looks like a SNES era sort of like pixel art game. But one of the lead boss designer on that, Francis Cullum, is the artist and creator of the game Look Outside. If you guys have heard of that, it was a horror RPG that came out this year. And, that game has some of the best body horror art I've seen in a game ever. And him utilizing that influence in a game that's very different than horror, still you can see like elements of the horror genre being used to sort of like exemplify that art style and having a little horror tinge here, even if the main mission of that game is not to be horror.
Oh, nice. I'll have to check that out. Talking of the body horror, that reminds me, I rewatched Invasion of the Body Snatchers just the other day, the 70s one with Donald Sutherland, and that is just still stands up, that one. Like the effects they managed in that era, just the kind of those weird hairs just kind of coating people's bodies. I think that was one that I kind of I'd forgotten about how effective that was. Body horror is definitely something that kind of I'm just going to mention Society now, and I don't want to.
Well, you mentioning Invasion of the Body Snatchers, like that's one of the few horror films that I think every one of the remakes of that film is really unique in a way that so few films that have been remade to death are, in that each one of those films like tackles that concept in a little bit of a different way each time. And like even the 90s one that I had seen only a few years ago and was up until that point was like, oh, I don't really need to see that. I wasn't a huge fan of some 90s horror remakes and whatnot, but watching it as an adult, does something unique.
That's the Abel Ferrara one, isn't it? With Jennifer Tilly. That was really good. She was fantastic. Is it Meg Tilly or Jennifer Tilly?
Meg Tilly, yeah.
Meg Tilly, yeah. Jennifer Tilly was bound.
Mm-hmm.
I've not seen the one with Daniel Craig in yet. I keep meaning to see that, but those two, him and Nicole Kidman, I'm like wooden. They're just both really wooden, and I don't want to kind of kill it, but I really appreciated the Abel Ferrara one.
Nice.
Where are you gonna go? Where are you gonna run? Fucking, she improvised that apparently. I mean, that is just that's the line you remember from that movie. It's just amazing.
Going down this sort of rabbit hole and talking about horror films, and most of the examples that we gave, they're not always the most hopeful of outcomes, especially with like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the Donald Sutherland one. I guess with Reanimal, you guys have, my understanding is, shaped sort of the narrative and the character development around this concept of like hopeful horror. How did that sort of like change, I suppose, the approach to designing the characters in the world of Reanimal, Dave?
Well, I think it's like a reminder to us to to try and strike a balance more than anything. It's a really hard thing to put a name to as well. Back with Little Nightmares, I think we kept going about charm and whimsy and all that business, and we knew there was no charm or whimsy in this story we were going to tell. But like that, maybe with hopeful horror, it's like maybe you're hopeful that everything will turn out well at the end or something. But like, it's trying to remember that balance that these are kids, like, because if you put like some super jacked up adult character in this same situation, then well, you can throw anything at them, and they'll probably find a gun sometime or crowbar, and things go the way that things go. Whereas when it's a kid, you can't help but root for them, and so the hope comes from there. You're sort of like, oh man, I hope you're all right. You're kind of hoping in that way. And that, like, where they can, they try and be kids again. They try and reconnect with that, and we've got elements of that there, when these kids start getting back together, trying to be, we're mates, aren't we? It's that kind of a thing, and just what happens when you got a group of kids in this awful situation. So, it's a hard thing to put a name on, but it's more like that, just trying to strike that balance between a world that's filled with horrifying things and kids that are just dumped in the middle of that, and they're the ones that represent hope and like hope for the future and all that sort of stuff. So it's not really kind of us saying that's how things are going to end. You should just be hopeful that they'll end in a way that you
want. I forget if have you guys said how long roughly Reanimal is?
Yeah, I mean, it's varied a bit. We've always said like it's definitely going to be less than 10 hours because we're not trying to make any bigger games than that. But I think we're ending up at 6 to 8 or 6 to 7 hours.
Perfect. Yeah, no. Another thing that Neil and I are always harping on about is like the older we both get, we really appreciate games that are, I don't want to say that are shorter, but games that like they really take into effect, the type of experience it is and not sort of like outstaying that welcome, if you will, right? It's like when I was younger, it's like I want to get the most bang for my buck. I want that 30, 40, 50 hour game. But I think nowadays, like I really look for those games that utilize their sort of like length well, and specifically for horror, like the shorter the experience, and I find same with film, those are the experiences that are able to retain their horror more, right? It's like, it's the pacing of a horror film where if it's by the time you get to the third act, you're like, yeah, it's, I've seen the monster by now kind of a thing, so it outstays its welcome.
You want the impact and you want it to be memorable, and yeah, you can't make too big of a game in that situation. So I think it fits us really well. And also, I mean, for us, we've talked about it internally. I mean, it comes from different sort of things, obviously, but we're also getting a bit older. Time is, valuable. And you can't spend, I at least I can't spend that much time on playing games. So if I do, I want it to be really, really good. So it comes partly from that side of things, but it's also about, every moment in the game we want to become something memorable and something impactful. And instead of just growing a game with side quests or whatnot, I think we've always been like that, actually, since the very start of the studio. Like, let's not add a lot of other shit here. Let's focus on what's important. just fits my lifestyle now as well.
I'll give a quick shout out then to a game that we covered this year that is along those lines. It's really about highlighting the impactfulness of it in a short period of time. And that is a game called Without a Dawn, which is a visual novel from a developer named Jesse McConan. And it's like 50 minutes, give or take, maybe a little bit more. But like it's this really, really short horror game that, is one of the most, we're thinking about our Game of the Year coverage already for this year. And it's like, it's one of the things that comes to mind, despite the fact it's not even an hour long. It really like gets in there, tells the type of story that it wants to, and gets out. And, a lot of the times when we cover games that are that short, sometimes listeners will comment and be like, well, it's too short. It's this cost, but it's one of those experiences that has really stuck with us. And we find that, it's more about the impact left on you than the length, as we've been saying. I guess in sort of starting to wrap up, I guess we usually like to just end by asking developers and creatives like games that they've played this year, maybe one or two games. If as busy as you guys are, like, is there a game, whether it was a 2025 release or something from your back catalog that you finally made time for that has stood out to you sort of this year? Dave, I'll start with you.
Oh, you start with me. I was just racking my old brain. What have I done with my life? Split Fiction, actually. In fact, there was two. The year started with Astrobot. Me and my wife played that over last Christmas break, and that was just not horror in the slightest, but what a game! Just tight as hell. And then Split Fiction, Joseph Farah's game, which was like the greatest hits of games. Just like the best bits of movies and games and stuff. Like, oh, I get to ride the sandworm. Okay. Oh, now I'm doing. It was just there's that Shadow of the Colossus bit. It was just fun mechanic after fun mechanic. Unashamed, great co-op fun. And I was moaning about the cutscenes. I didn't tell him that when we met him in Tokyo, but I was like, I can't turn off that side of my brain. But as a game, I was like, absolute, really, really enjoyed that one. Next on my list, though, is Loop Error, because I've heard some really good things about that one. That's like I think that's maybe a few hours long, like horror game. It reminded me a little bit of like before I played Paratopic. That kind of, I've no idea what's coming, but it feels very, very up my street, that one. And then in the news at the moment is something called Horses, and I watched the trailer and I was like, fuck me, I've got to play that because that just looks demented. I don't know if it's a good game. It's out in a couple of days, but the trailer got me intrigued. So
are they gonna release that outside of Steam?
Everywhere but Steam, but it doesn't look like it. Right now they're saying that like if this doesn't come out on Steam, it could kill the studio. But I think maybe it's given them so much publicity that everyone's going to play it. It's like, what was it called? Thrill Kill, that thing back on PS1. That like fighting game. It was like an S&M themed fighting game that was never released, but because I had a chip PlayStation, I got a copy of it and played it, and it was totally wackadoo. And then it was like it got reskinned as like, I think it was Wu-Tang or Def Jam. It was Wu-Tang or Def Jam Feel the Pain. I can't remember. It was one of them.
I think it was Wu-Tang.
And it was exactly the same game, but was it Wu-Tang? Was it?
I think it was.
But it took me back to all of that. This kind of like, oh shit, games can do that still, can't they? That's amazing.
I was a huge fan of their other game, Saturnalia. So that whole issue with them not getting on Steam, I hate to hear, because they're clearly such a talented studio, and we've unfortunately, that's not the first instance of that this year. There was a game called Vile Exhumed, which was developed by Final Girl Games and published by Dread XP, that ran into some kind of issue where Steam revoked it because they said it had some type of content that was not actually in the game. And it was one of those things where, fortunately, the developer found some some luck in going some alternative routes with that and getting it not published, unfortunately, but just getting it out there and getting people to play it. So
Yeah, it's so bad that when there's such a huge outlet like for PC gaming, isn't it? You know, if they decide to not release something, that can fuck with an entire studio, and also restricting like valid games that people really should get to play. You know, but yeah, I don't like the sound of that. But so I hope people play it anyway if it's good. But you know, you should at least get to find that out for yourself.
absolutely. Yeah, Andreas, for you, what is a game or two that you've enjoyed this year, whether it's a new release or something that you've been waiting to get around to?
So this is gonna sound really weird, but so Astrobot is on my list as well, but it's because both me and Merv have young kids, so it's an amazing game for kids. But I'm really excited to get to play Minecraft for the first time ever with my oldest kid, and it's a joy just to try it out and build, and building logic gates and stuff like that. It's a lot of fun, very creative. But then when I play myself and I have time, the latest game that I'm trying out now is Ark. Made from a Swedish developer. Yeah. So and that's quite fun. I have a couple of friends where I once a week, maybe once every second week, get an hour kind of. Let's jump in. Let's raid this house. Come on, better be quick now because I need to put my kids to sleep.
Or in my case, I'm in the same thing where it's like I've got an hour, but then we get that hour, but then my girlfriend comes in and is like, you guys are being really loud. What is going on here? Like, I'm trying to find this balance.
And it's the same guys I play the Elden Ring. What is the 3-player co-op Elden Ring?
Shadow of Erdtree. Is that it?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Which was also amazing. Just amazing how you can take the skeleton of another game and transform it to something completely different, and that feels completely different as well. But it was the same kind of setup. Every other week, maybe an hour, and you jump in and you play around. And I like that there are those kind of games where you have those kind of 30 to 40 minute rounds where you can kind of I can spend 40 minutes on Tuesday evening next week.
Maybe.
And the next on my list that I want to try out is from Double Fine, and I keep forgetting the name. But they released their new game a month ago or something about the lighthouse.
Keeper.
Maybe. Yeah, Keeper.
Keeper, yeah.
That's on my kind of next game to-do list.
Peak I really want to play, but I need 3 friends.
Yeah, you and me.
Well, yeah, but then 2 more.
Yeah.
You got 2 other friends.
I don't know. Maybe. But yeah,
time and friends become the most difficult things the older and older you get,
But it is kind of interesting, that trend of co-op. What are they called? Like that genre, co-op slop, co-op.
Co-op slop.
Yeah. It's quite an interesting genre.
Yeah, I think that as we kind of talked about earlier, that's one of those things that for seemingly like years, whether it was couch co-op or otherwise, like there was such a void of, and to see that kind of like having a resurgence is really fantastic to see, because it used to be it was one of those things, it was a staple for so long, and then kind of just like disappeared, and to see that coming back even more so, whether it's games that are like a like a linear sort of campaign co-op focus, or if it's just something where, you get together for 30 or 40-minute rounds and just have yourself a ball. But thank you guys both so much for joining me today to chat about Reanimal and let me, pick your brain about the sort of design process and to yap a little bit about horror movies and stuff at you. So thank you both very much.
That was a pleasure.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Safe Room. If you've enjoyed our horror discussions, please rate and review the show on Apple Podcast or Spotify. For show updates and additional content, you can follow us on Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, and YouTube at Safe Room Pod. Additionally, you can join our Safe Room Podcast Discord to chat with us and other horror fans about the genre we all love. And finally, you can send emails to saferoompod@gmail.com if you'd like to share your thoughts on a game we have or are about to cover. Thanks again for listening, and be sure to check out our episode of Horror Bites out this Thursday. And until then, we'll see you guys for a main feed episode next Monday.
Hey, Ryan Reynolds here for Mint Mobile. One of the perks about having 4 kids that you know about is actually getting a direct line to the big man up north. Mm-hmm. And this year, he wants you to know the best gift that you can give someone is the gift of Mint Mobile's unlimited wireless for $15 a month. Now, you don't even need to wrap it. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.